Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The first punch wasn't a fist. It was a voice, raw, furious, ripping down the aisle of the aircraft like a blade snapping through steel. Get off my plane. The captain's roar cracked across first class so hard even the cabin lights seemed to flicker. Passengers froze mid-sip, mid-sentence, mid-breath. The air itself held still. And at the center of that stunned silence stood a man in a navy suit, tie crisp, posture composed, jaw locked in a calm no storm could shake. Marcus Reed. He didn't flinch. Not when the captain stormed up, not when the man's shadow swallowed the aisle, not even when the captain's finger jabbed toward the lapel of Marcus' jacket, as if accusing him of a crime he hadn't committed. "You heard me!" The captain spat, his face a furious red. "You people don't belong in first class, unless someone upgrades you by mistake." The phrase landed like a slap across the entire cabin. "You people!" A handful of passengers exchanged excited glances, hungry for spectacle. Phones rose in unison, smooth. Polished rectangles lifted like silent predators ready to feed. A woman 2 rows back whispered, "I knew something was off when he sat down." Another man chuckled, "Well, better now than mid-flight." Their eyes weren't curious, they were expectant, awaiting humiliation, as if it were part of the entertainment package. Behind the captain, a young flight attendant hovered with her hands clasped tight, knuckles white against her uniform. She opened her mouth once, twice, but fear or protocol sealed it shut. She looked at Marcus with an apology buried in her eyes, the kind that said she knew this was wrong but couldn't stop it. Marcus kept his gaze steady on the captain. Not hard, not confrontational, just dignified. A man refusing to be moved by someone who wanted him small. "Your boarding pass is fake," the captain barked, "and you're delaying my departure. Grab your things and get out before I call security to drag you out." A ripple of agreement rolled through the cabin. Someone muttered, "About time." Another added, "He should be grateful they're not arresting him." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The plane itself seemed to shrink around him, rows compressing, walls pressing in, all eyes locking onto the man in the immaculate suit. But Marcus didn't move. Not his shoulders, not his breath, not even his hands, which remained calm at his sides despite every insult being thrown like stones. The captain leaned closer, breath hot with anger. "This is my aircraft, and on my aircraft, I decide who stays and who goes. A final shove of authority. Now move." But Marcus stayed still, eyes clear, voice level. "I paid for this seat." The captain scoffed so loud it echoed. "With what? A stolen card?" Gasps rippled through the cabin. The man in 1C let out a low whistle, as if the captain had delivered some clever punchline. Another passenger began recording more openly, angling for the perfect viral moment. The flight attendant's voice finally cracked through. "Captain, maybe we should." Not another word. He snapped without turning to her. Marcus' jaw tightened, not from fear, but from memory. Another airport, another uniform, another accusation. Another moment where dignity was treated like a privilege instead of a right. But he wasn't 19 anymore, and he wasn't powerless. For everyone still waiting at gates built by hands that never expected them to pass through, Marcus walked forward. Not victorious. Just rightfully, quietly, undeniably, where he belonged. So did the passengers. Even the flight attendant took a startled half-step back. Marcus withdrew a phone. A simple motion, but carried with it the weight of someone who knew exactly what line had just been crossed. The captain scoffed again. "What, you think calling someone will save you?" Marcus didn't look at him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain himself to a man who believed respect was a gate he owned the keys to. He simply lifted the phone to his ear and said, Begin it. 2 words. Soft, composed, and lethal in a way no one in that cabin could yet understand. The flight attendant blinked. Passengers exchanged puzzled looks. The captain let out a disbelieving laugh. But Marcus' face didn't change. Something had begun. Something none of them, especially the man shouting inches from his face, were prepared to face. And the sky above them was about to change ownership. The cabin didn't breathe. Not the passengers, not the attendants, not even the recycled air whispering through the vents. Everything inside that metal tube at 38 rows long felt suspended, caught between the captain's rage and the unnerving stillness of the man head just threatened. Marcus lowered the phone from his ear, its screen dimming back to black. No theatrics, no defiance, just a man reclaiming silence in a room full of eyes waiting for him to break. But the captain wasn't done. "Oh, that's cute," he snarled, planting a hand on the headrest beside Marcus as if to cage him in. "You calling your cousin? Your buddy? Gonna have someone bail you out after you ruin my flight?" A few laughs trembled through first class, thin, nervous, but still there. The kind that people use to convince themselves they're on the winning side. Behind the captain, a woman in designer sunglasses lowered them just enough to inspect Marcus like he was an inconvenience rather than a human being. "Hez, holding up real customers," she muttered. Another man chimed in. "Some people just can't follow rules." The words hit the cabin like a spreading stain, the kind you can't wash out, the kind you've heard before. Marcus didn't respond. He simply adjusted the cuff of his shirt, a quiet gesture, steady and deliberate. He had spent his entire adult life mastering the art of silence, of choosing when to speak and when to let arrogance reveal itself. Even now, as humiliation tried to close in on him, he stood as if carved from calm. The captain mistook that calm for weakness. Most people do. "I'm giving you one last chance," he said, voice low but venomous. "Stand up and walk off this plane like a civilized man. Or make sure you're dragged off like a criminal." Dragged. A word heavy enough to shift the air. The young flight attendant's throat bobbed as she swallowed. She looked between them, Captain, Marcus. Captain again, like watching a fire grow too close to the curtains. "Captain," she whispered. "Maybe we should verify his—" "Do not question me," he snapped. "Not on my plane." Some passengers nodded along. Others had already lifted their phones higher, angles optimized, ready for confrontation. But a few, just a few, watched Marcus with something else in their eyes. Not sympathy, not yet, but suspicion, curiosity, a sense that they were misreading a man who hadn't reacted the way they expected. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as boarding continued. Someone tried to squeeze past but froze when they realized they'd have to move between the furious captain and the still, immovable man in the aisle. Marcus finally spoke. "Is this how you treat your customers?" Calm, level, not a tremor of anger. The captain laughed sharply. "You're not my customer. You're a problem." He leaned in until his nose almost brushed Marcus. "And problems get removed." The woman in sunglasses smirked. "Just throw him out already." Marcus inhaled once, slow and measured. He looked past the captain for the first time, scanning the aisle, the rows, the faces, memorizing every expression, not in anger, but in clarity. Inside him, something quiet clicked into place. He looked back at the captain. "Are you finished?" he asked. The captain blinked. No one had ever spoken to him like that on his aircraft. Not calmly, not without fear. "What did you just say?" he growled. Marcus didn't blink. "I asked if you're finished." For a moment, just a heartbeat, the cabin wavered. Power shifted by a fraction, like the tilt of a scale before judgment tips. A voice crackled suddenly through the intercom. "Captain, operations says they need you. Urgent. Right now." The captain stiffened, annoyance flashing across his face, but he kept glaring at Marcus. "Stay right here," he hissed, jabbing a finger toward him. "Don't move." He turned sharply, pushing past the flight attendant as he stormed toward the cockpit. As soon as he disappeared, the cabin exhaled. The attendant stepped closer to Marcus, voice soft with a guilt she hadn't earned. I'm sorry," she whispered. This shouldn't have happened. Marcus looked at her with the same calm he hadn't once broken. "It's not your apology to give." She swallowed hard, nodding. Behind them, passengers resumed whispering, some smug, some uneasy, some suddenly unsure whose side they were on. Marcus returned to his seat, not defeated, not shaken, just patient, because humiliation is loud, but justice moves quietly, and something had already begun to move. For a long moment, Marcus sat perfectly still, surrounded by murmurs dressed as judgment. The plane hummed beneath him, steady, metallic, indifferent, a floating microcosm of hierarchy and entitlement, cruising toward a storm no one else knew was coming. Passengers continued stealing glances his way, as if expecting him to shrink into the leather seat or slink off the aircraft before the captain returned. But Marcus' stillness wasn't submission. It was memory, a quiet, razor-edged memory that lived under his ribs. The first time Head been told he didn't belong on a plane, he was 19. A scholarship kid with a single refurbished suitcase and a dream stitched together from second-hand books and midnight prayers. He wore the only blazer he owned. The gate agent didn't bother to look at his ticket. She sent him aside with the kind of smile people reserve for stray animals. "I need to make sure this is real," Shed said, loudly enough for a line of white businessmen to hear. He missed that flight, missed the orientation Head spent his whole childhood working toward. Walked back to campus in the rain that night, shoes soaked, throat burning, dignity scraped raw. And Head made a promise, one he whispered into the cold air like a vow forged in iron. "One day, I'll own the gates they close in my face." That promise followed him through every rejection, every boardroom where men laughed at his pitch decks, every meeting where people spoke slowly to him like success was a language he wasn't expected to understand. He built his first million flipping undervalued regional carriers, his first 100 million restructuring failing transport conglomerates. By 35, his fund Reed Ascendant Holdings quietly controlled stakes in airlines across 3 continents. Head never forgotten the 19-year-old version of himself. But today's humiliation sliced close to the bone. The young flight attendant approached again, more cautiously this time, her posture caught between protocol and conscience. "Sir, would you like a glass of water?" she asked softly. Marcus looked up at her. She was trying to fix a wound she didn't create, trying to offer humanity in a space that had forgotten it. He gave her a small nod. "Thank you." Her shoulders loosened at the simple acknowledgement. She brought him water with both hands, a small offering in a moment when the cabin felt colder than the air outside the fuselage. When she walked away, a man across the aisle leaned forward. "You really picked the wrong day to mess around," he said, smirking. "That captain doesn't play." His wife nudged him. "Leave it alone." He shrugged. "I'm just saying he should have moved when he was told." Marcus didn't answer. There was no point. People reveal themselves quickest when they think the consequences belong to someone else. He glanced at his watch. 5 minutes since the call. His team never needed more than 10. A faint vibration buzzed in his pocket. He didn't reach for it, not yet. Timing mattered. Optics mattered. But knowing the machinery had begun turning the silent gears of influence, equity, and ownership steadied something deep inside him. Far ahead, the cockpit door cracked open. The captain stepped out, jaw tight, eyes narrowed not with authority anymore but confusion. Maybe even fear. His steps weren't as sure as before. He glanced down the aisle, not at Marcus, but around him, like searching for a camera head missed. The operations team must have said something he didn't expect. He hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then he forced his authority back onto his face and started down the aisle toward Marcus again. But something had shifted. Everyone felt it. The whispers grew quieter. The phones lowered an inch. Even the engines seemed to hum differently, as if sensing the imbalance shifting in the cabin air. Marcus didn't rise, didn't speak. He simply straightened his jacket, an adjustment so subtle most people wouldn't notice. But the captain saw it, and for the first time since Head started shouting, he paused. Because dignity, when held firmly, has weight. And Marcus had carried his for a long time. As the captain reached his row, a notification dinged across several passengers' phones simultaneously. A headline flashed. Breaking. Reed Ascendant Holdings initiates aggressive move on Airline Group. Gasps rose. The captain froze mid-step, and Marcus finally lifted his eyes. Nothing needed to be said. The storm Head promised himself at 19 had finally arrived. The headline lit up the cabin like a quiet explosion. Passengers instinctively raised their phones higher, scrolling, refreshing, tapping through alerts that kept appearing faster than they could comprehend. A wave of murmurs rippled through first class, low, startled, skittering down the aisle like electricity searching for ground. The captain stood frozen, one hand still gripping the headrest in front of Marcus, his authority evaporating in real time. He didn't speak, couldn't. His eyes darted from headline to headline as though the very walls of the aircraft had turned against him. Marcus didn't move. He didn't need to. A second alert vibrated across the cabin. Read Ascendant Holdings. Requests. Emergency access to airline parent board. Trading halt expected. Internal review. Triggered at management level. The passengers who had sneered at him minutes before now stared as if trying to reconcile the man they mocked with the headlines screaming across their screens. Confusion melted into unease, unease into fear. The captain swallowed, throat clicking audibly. "Sir, I need you to explain," he began, but the words snagged. Authority didn't sit in his voice anymore. It trembled there, thin and uncertain. Marcus finally spoke. "Explain what?" A simple question, but it cut like a scalpel. The young flight attendant watched from the galley, hands pressed to her lips. She wasn't smiling, she was stunned, breath caught between apology and awe. She glanced at the passengers, at the captain, then back at Marcus, as if witnessing the axis of the room tilt beneath their feet. The cabin door slid open. A woman in a charcoal blazer stepped inside, calm, composed, the unmistakable posture of someone who didn't answer to crew members. A slim ID badge hung from her lanyard. Operations Director, North American Division. Gasps fluttered like loose papers in the wind. She walked straight to Marcus, ignoring every gawking face along the way. "Mr. Reed," she said with a respectful nod, "we're initiating the protocol you requested. The board has confirmed your access. The vote is underway." The captain blinked. "Vote? What vote? What's happening?" Her eyes slid toward him with the neutral softness reserved for people already losing their jobs. "Captain Harris, you were instructed to comply with operations 10 minutes ago," she said. "You didn't." He was in a seat he didn't belong in," the captain sputtered. "He couldn't possibly. He belongs anywhere he chooses to sit," she replied quietly. Marcus turned his gaze from her to the rows of passengers who had watched him like a spectacle. He saw their shifting expressions, shame blooming where arrogance once sat, embarrassment creeping into the corners of their eyes. They clutched their phones as if holding on to the last seconds of a reality they finally understood was turning to ash. Marcus didn't relish their discomfort. He just recognized it. The operations director spoke again. "Sir, would you like to take this in a private cabin?" "No," Marcus said. "Here is fine." A few passengers flinched, not from volume, but from the weight behind the words. The captain tried one last grasp at control. You can't make decisions about my aircraft." "It's not your aircraft," Marcus answered, voice calm as a locked vault. "Not anymore." A fresh headline popped onto every unlocked screen. Breaking. Reed Ascendant Holdings surges toward majority control. Emergency restructure expected. The captain's face drained as the truth finally settled. Marcus lifted his phone again, not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate. "Confirm acquisition," he said. 2 words, soft, precise, irreversible. The operations director tapped her earpiece. "Board confirms. Mr. Reed now holds controlling authority until further notice." For a moment, the cabin was silent, completely. Then someone at the front accidentally dropped a fork. The metallic clatter echoed like a gunshot. Marcus rose from his seat with quiet grace, smoothing the jacket the captain had tried to wrinkle minutes earlier. He looked the captain directly in the eyes. "You pulled me from my seat," he said. "Now I pull you from yours." The operations director stepped forward. "Captain Harris, you are relieved of duty pending investigation. Please step aside. No shouting, no resistance. Just a man realizing the sky he claimed ownership of was never his to begin with." And Marcus? He simply turned back toward first class, reclaiming the space with the same steadiness had held since the first insult thrown at him. Dignity didn't need volume. Power didn't need spectacle. It only needed the right moment. and that moment had finally arrived. The aisle felt different now, not wider, not brighter, just heavier, as if the weight of every assumption, every smirk, every whispered judgment from minutes earlier had sunk into the carpet beneath everyone's feet. Captain Harris stood pale and rigid, surrounded by a silence more suffocating than his own shouting had been. Two senior crew members approached him gently, guiding him away from the cockpit door. His hands trembled, not with anger anymore, but with the realization of consequences he never imagined would fall on him. Marcus remained exactly where he was, centered in the aisle, posture still, presence undeniable. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't cursed, hadn't shoved. Yet the entire cabin had rearranged itself in response to him. The shift was almost geological. Passengers pretended not to stare, but their eyes flicked toward him like compass needles pulled toward a new north. A man in the second row cleared his throat, voice cracking. I didn't know," he said softly, as if seeking forgiveness that Marcus had never offered him the authority to ask for. His wife nudged him sharply. "Stop talking." But it was too late. Everyone heard it. The whisper of a truth settling in uncomfortable places. They had judged a man before they knew him, and now they were afraid of what that said about them. The young flight attendant stepped closer, not timid this time, but steady. "Mr. Reed, we've prepared the forward cabin for you," she said. "Would you like to move there?" Marcus shook his head. "I'll sit here." Her eyes softened, understanding the message hidden beneath the refusal. He wasn't here to hide. He wasn't here to be ushered into a special corner to make anyone else feel better. He was here because this seat, this exact one, had been denied to him unjustly. And dignity meant reclaiming it in full view of the people who tried to strip it away. At that moment, the intercom crackled again. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is operations. Please remain seated. We are conducting a brief personnel transition before departure." The passengers shifted, uneasily aware they were witnessing something far beyond a routine announcement. Another vibration hummed inside Marcus' jacket. He checked it this time. A message from his chief legal officer. "Control threshold passed. Acquisition confirmed. Parent board dissolved pending reformation. Your directives now active." Below it, a second message. "Recommend immediate safety plus culture audit for entire airline group." Marcus exhaled, a calm breath that carried 20 years of battles no one in this cabin would ever see. He typed 2 words, "Proceed, audit." Then he slipped the phone away. The operations director approached him again, lowering her voice. "Sir, internal systems are updating. We've already suspended 2 senior managers for past misconduct reports that surfaced during the audit trigger." She paused. "And the new interim CEO wants to offer you his direct line." Marcus gave her a nod. "Later." She stepped back, but not before glancing around the cabin as if committing the moment to memory. It wasn't every day someone reshaped an entire corporate hierarchy mid-flight. A flight attendant at the back whispered to another, "Is he, like, the owner now?" The other shrugged, wide-eyed. "He just fired the captain. So, kinda?" Marcus sat down, calm, anchored. Not triumphant, simply resolute. Across the aisle, the man who had mocked him earlier shifted in his seat. "I didn't mean anything by what I said," he whispered. Marcus didn't look at him. "Meaning isn't the same as impact," he replied quietly. The man swallowed, shrinking into his seat. A new captain entered the cabin composed, respectful, professionalism radiating from every step. He stopped when he reached Marcus. "Mr. Reed," he said with a nod, "we're honored to have you on board. The flight crew is ready when you are. The phrasing wasn't flattery. It was reality. Marcus adjusted the seatbelt he'd been told he didn't deserve not long ago. "Let's fly," he said. The new captain smiled and headed to the cockpit. The engines rumbled beneath them, a deep, powerful hum, like the sky itself was acknowledging the shift. And as the plane prepared for departure, the passengers sat straighter, quieter, each privately reconsidering the assumptions they carried with them like unexamined luggage. Marcus rested his hands on the armrests, not claiming power, not flaunting it, just affirming something simple and profound. He belonged, here, and anywhere he chose. Justice hadn't yelled, it hadn't pushed, it hadn't barked like the man removed from the cockpit. It had simply arrived, quiet, Precise, unavoidable, just like he promised himself it would. The engines growled deeper as the aircraft taxied, a low thunder rolling beneath the floor, steady, inevitable, like something powerful waking from sleep. But inside the cabin, the tension hadn't eased. It had simply changed shape. People watched Marcus without watching him. Eyes flicked, then darted away. Whispers were smaller now, tighter, swallowed before they reached the next row. Power exposed does that to a room. The new captain's voice flowed gently through the speakers, calm and professional, everything the previous one wasn't. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are preparing for departure. Please ensure all electronic devices are set to airplane mode and remain seated as we begin our taxi. A subtle shift rippled through the cabin, order restored, fear diluted, respect settling like dust after a storm. In row 1, a teenager slowly lowered his phone from where he'd been recording earlier. His mother nudged him sharply. "Delete that," she hissed. "Why?" he whispered. "Because that man could ruin us." The teenager glanced at Marcus again, eyes wide, not in fear but in awe. "He didn't yell once," he murmured. 3 rows back, the woman with the oversized sunglasses pulled them off and began cleaning the lenses compulsively, as if wiping away the reflection of her own earlier arrogance. I didn't know," she whispered to her husband. "You didn't care," he answered quietly. She froze. But Marcus wasn't looking at any of them. He was looking out the window. Snow flurries drifted across the tarmac, catching the glow of runway lights, dancing in patterns that reminded him of the tiny storms he used to watch from his grandmother's porch. Back before he knew what stock options were, before he learned what generational wealth meant, before he understood how many doors would try to close on him. He remembered her voice, soft but iron strong. "Baby, the world won't always open for you, so you learn to open it yourself." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Head done exactly that. The operations director approached again, her steps softer than before. "Mr. Reed," she murmured, "the board has formally removed 3 executive officers. HR is coordinating with legal to process the dismissals. Also, we've initiated an internal cultural review across all divisions." "Your directive," Marcus nodded once. "Good." She hesitated only a moment, then added, "I've been with this airline 13 years, sir. I've never seen accountability move this fast." "It should have moved sooner," Marcus replied. Her gaze softened. "Yes, sir, it should have." Then she stepped back. From behind Marcus came a new voice, shaky, tentative. "Mr. Reed?" He turned. It was the older businessman who'd muttered earlier about real customers. His face was pale now, lips pressed into a thin line of embarrassment. "I want to apologize," the man said. "I misjudged the situation, and I misjudged you." Marcus studied him, not cruelly, just honestly. "Apologies matter more when they're not prompted by fear," he said. The man flinched, nodded, and sat down again. Up front, the young flight attendant lingered in the galley, watching Marcus. She finally approached, hands clasped behind her. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you stayed," she said quietly. Marcus met her eyes. There was sincerity there, unpolished and earnest. "Thank you," he said. "What's your name?" "Lena." "Lena," he repeated, with the kind of acknowledgement her own captain had never given her. "You handled yourself well." A breath shuddered out of her relief, gratitude, something unspoken. She nodded and slipped back toward the galley, posture straighter. The aircraft paused at the runway threshold. Engines surged. But before they took off, Marcus' phone buzzed one last time. "CFO, acquisition completed. You now hold 63% controlling interest. Full authority granted." Marcus locked the screen, letting the moment settle in his chest. He wasn't on this aircraft by chance. He wasn't here because of luck, accident, or coincidence. He was here because the world had once told him he didn't belong in a seat like this, and he had come back to claim it, not with shouting, not with force, but with the power he built quietly, relentlessly, on his own terms. The engines roared. The plane surged forward. As it lifted into the sky, Marcus leaned back, not triumphant, not smug, just steady. He didn't need anyone's permission to be here. He never had. But today, everyone finally knew. Somewhere above the cloud line, cruising at 36,000 feet, the truth finally caught up with those who tried to bury it. The cabin lights dimmed to a warm amber glow, casting soft halos over faces that had, until recently, worn expressions of certainty. Certainty in their assumptions, in their entitlement, in their belief that the world naturally sorted itself into those who belonged and those who didn't. Now that certainty was gone. An alert chimed across multiple devices at once, not from the airline, from the world outside it. A news banner scrolled across every unlocked phone. Global markets react. Reed Ascendant Holdings takes control of major airline group. CEO resigns. Multiple executives under investigation. Airline faces public outrage after in-flight incident. One passenger gasped so sharply the attendants near the galley turned. A woman in row 3 whispered, "My God, this is everywhere." Her husband replied, "It's not just everywhere, it's escalating." Another alert flashed. Number fly with respect. Trending worldwide. Number let him sit. 4. 2M mentions in 30 minutes. Number Reed takes flight viral surge. Someone in business class leaned into the aisle, trying to get a glimpse into first class, like it was suddenly holy ground. Meanwhile, Marcus sat with quiet composure, scrolling through none of it. He didn't need to. His role in the moment wasn't to react, but to witness. Across from him, passengers grew restless, shifting under the weight of something they didn't have the vocabulary to name. Accountability. A man 2 rows back exhaled heavily. "They're replaying the footage online. All of it." His voice trembled. "My face is in one of the clips." The woman with the sunglasses now folded neatly in her lap closed her eyes. "I shouldn't have laughed," she whispered. Her husband squeezed her hand but didn't disagree. The aircraft wasn't descending, but the room felt like it was. The operations director returned briefly, speaking low so only Marcus could hear. "Sir, media outlets are requesting statements. CEOs from partner companies are reaching out. 3 airlines have already issued supportive public comments." Marcus nodded, not surprised. When accountability hits one person, companies hide. When accountability hits millions of views, companies sprint. "Tell them I'll speak tomorrow," he said. "Yes, sir." She hesitated, then added, "And the incident footage. It's globally viral. The captain's actions are being condemned at every level." Marcus inhaled, not satisfaction, but certainty. Consequences didn't erase what happened, but they reminded the world that dignity wasn't optional. As she stepped away, a teenage boy, same one who'd been recording earlier, mustered the courage to speak. "Sir?" he said softly. Marcus turned. The boy swallowed. "I know it probably doesn't mean anything right now, but my dad taught me people should be judged by how they carry themselves. And you carried yourself better than anyone in this cabin?" His mother shot him a warning look, but it was too late. Marcus offered the boy the faintest nod. "Thank you," he said. The boy smiled, relief pouring across his face like sunlight breaking through cloud cover. Then, as if the universe wanted to punctuate the moment, another headline flashed across a nearby screen. This one louder, bolder, unignorable. New interim CEO announces sweeping culture reform. Statement. Discrimination has consequences. Structural changes. Effective immediately. Passengers stared at Marcus with a new expression, not fear, not guilt, but something almost resembling respect. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't lift his chin with superiority. He simply breathed. Because power used responsibly doesn't roar, it resonates. The flight attendant, Lena, returned once more, offering him a fresh glass of water. Her hands didn't shake this time. "Mr. Reed," she said softly. "The crew, we're all talking. We hope you know this shouldn't have happened to you." Marcus looked at her with the same steady, calm head held since the beginning. "It happened to more people than me," he said. "I'm just the one who could answer back." Lena's eyes shimmered with a mix of relief and realization. The plane hummed on, slicing through darkness as the world below recalibrated itself. Every mile forward carried the weight of a story no one on this aircraft would forget. Justice had begun spreading, not through anger, not through vengeance, but through truth, finally landing where it needed to. Dawn had not yet touched the sky, but something else was rising, something heavier than sunlight. something that moved through the world in real time as the aircraft cut across the dark. Reform, the kind that isn't symbolic, isn't polite, isn't drafted in boardrooms with polished table legs, the kind that rearranges power structures at the root. A soft chime from Marcus' phone broke the hum of engines. He checked it with the unhurried calm of someone long accustomed to movements measured in millions. General Counsel, full acquisition finalized. Government aviation offices notified. New leadership announcement scheduled. Cultural overhaul approved. A second message followed. Press is calling this the fastest executive turnover in airline history. Marcus locked the screen. Not out of indifference, out of purpose. The numbers, the control, the headlines were tools, fuel. He hadn't built decades of power just to bask in a single moment of righteousness. Had built it to use it. Lena, the young flight attendant, passed quietly, her steps lighter than before. She paused by Marcus' seat, hesitating like someone approaching a shift in their own life. "Mr. Reed," she said softly, we've been told new training protocols are starting next week. Mandatory. Everything from bias awareness to conflict escalation. And, pay adjustments." Marcus nodded. "Good. You all deserve better than what you saw today." Her eyes warmed at that, not because he said it, but because he meant it. She slipped away, more confident than Shed entered. Across the aisle, the businessman who'd scoffed earlier stared out the window, no longer smug, just reflective. His wife whispered, "It's a different world, isn't it?" "No," he replied quietly. "It always was. We just never had to face it." A few seats back, the woman with the sunglasses fidgeted with her bracelet, swallowed, then leaned forward. "Mr. Reed?" she called in a trembling voice. Marcus turned. She swallowed again. "I behaved very poorly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you know some of us are learning tonight." Marcus studied her for a long beat, not condemning, not absolving. "Learning is the starting point," he said, "not the finish line." She nodded, ashamed but grateful. The operations director approached once more, her expression sharpened with purpose. "Sir, the new interim CEO just issued his first directive," she said. "Has reopening the scholarship programs that were cut 3 years ago. And he asked if you wanted to rename the flagship initiative." Marcus' gaze drifted to the window again, toward the sky he once watched with longing from a neighborhood no one in this cabin could pronounce. He thought of his grandmother's hands, cracked from work, his mother's exhaustion. His own 19-year-old reflection, told he didn't belong. "Name it," he said. "The Runway Rising Initiative. Full funding, no caps." "Yes, sir," she whispered, almost reverent. She stepped away, tapping instructions into her tablet like carrying a torch. The cabin fell quiet again, not the uneasy silence from earlier, but a contemplative one, a silence of reckoning. And in the hum of that silence, another headline buzzed through every phone. Runway Rising Initiative launches focused on black pilots, engineers, and future aviation leaders. Mr. Reed personally funds scholarships for underrepresented youth. Airline group commits to industry-wide equity reforms. A teenage girl near the bulkhead whispered, "I want to be a pilot one day." Her father smiled, a little shaken. "Maybe now you can." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to steady the weight of what this moment meant. Not just for him, not just for the airline, but for every child who had been told no before they'd even learned to fly. His phone buzzed again, this time with a simple message from his CFO. "It's done, Marcus. The sky is yours." Marcus opened his eyes. "The sky belongs to everyone," he murmured. And for the first time since the confrontation began, a faint warmth settled in his chest. Not victory, not revenge, restoration. The kind that echoes forward into policy, into leadership, into lives that haven't even boarded their first flight yet. Justice wasn't finished. It was just starting to take off. When the wheels touched the runway, the landing wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. A descent into a world rearranged. A world where every passenger on that aircraft now carried the memory of a moment they could never justify, excuse, or forget. The engines sighed as the plane slowed, a long exhale into dawnlight. The horizon glowed faintly outside Marcus' window, a soft blue brushing the edges of a new morning. It pressed gently across the tarmac like a reset button no one had asked for but everyone needed. Seatbelts clicked open in scattered, hesitant rhythms. People didn't leap to stand the way they usually do after landing. No one rushed the aisle, no one pushed, no one pretended this was an ordinary flight, because it wasn't. The new captain emerged from the cockpit, composed and respectful. "Mr. Reed," he said warmly, "we're honored to have arrived safely. Ground personnel are preparing a private exit for you." Marcus shook his head. "No private exit." The captain blinked. "But Sir, I'll walk out like everyone else." A ripple of unease moved through first class. Passengers straightened in their seats, unsure of what that meant, unsure if they deserved to share a hallway with the man whose dignity they'd witnessed ridiculed, then resurrected in ways that rewrote their understanding of power. Row by row, people stood. They didn't look away from Marcus this time. They didn't whisper. They simply watched quietly, almost reverently, as he rose and stepped into the aisle with calm, steady purpose. Lena approached one last time. "Thank you for how you handled everything," she said. Most people would have screamed, or fought, or... She trailed off. Marcus offered her a gentle nod. "Sometimes the loudest thing you can do," he said, "is stay calm." Her eyes softened. "I hope I get to work on one of your flights again." "You will," Marcus replied. "And next time, it'll be a better airline." She smiled relief mixed with pride and stepped back to let him move on. In the aisle, the businessman who'd mocked him earlier shifted awkwardly. "Mr. Reed," he began, voice tight. "If there's anything there is," Marcus said. The man straightened, hopeful, bracing. "Carry what you learned today," Marcus continued. "And don't forget it when there's no audience." The man swallowed, hard. As Marcus walked toward the front, the woman with the sunglasses lowered her gaze and whispered, "I'm sorry." He didn't slow, but he didn't ignore her either. "Be better," he said gently. She nodded, blinking back something raw and unpolished. At the aircraft door, the operations director waited. She bowed her head slightly. "Sir, the press is assembling outside the terminal. They've been instructed not to approach you directly." Marcus gave her a small, appreciative nod. "Thank you. But today was never about the press." She exhaled, almost relieved by the clarity of his purpose. "Your leadership is already reshaping everything." "Leadership means responsibility," Marcus said, "not spotlight." The jet bridge yawned open cold metal, fluorescent lights, the echo of early morning footsteps drifting from the terminal like distant memories. He stepped forward without hesitation. But before he crossed the threshold, something made him pause. He turned back to the cabin. Every passenger had stopped. Every face was turned toward him, not in fear, not in awe, but in understanding. For the first time since the shouting began, the cabin was united in a single expression, the quiet acknowledgement of their own reflection, seen more clearly through the man they underestimated. Marcus held their eyes for one final moment. "No one," he said quietly, "gets to decide where you belong." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Truth doesn't require volume. With that, he stepped onto the jet bridge, the metallic clang of his first footstep landing like punctuation. Behind him, the cabin remained still, as if waiting for the moment to settle inside each person before they moved again. Down the corridor, sunlight spilled through the terminal windows, the first rays of dawn warming the polished floor. The world outside was already buzzing with headlines, alerts, interviews, speculations, but none of it mattered as much as the quiet clarity carried in Marcus' stride. He didn't slow, didn't celebrate, didn't look back. Because justice, when it truly lands, is not an ending, it's a beginning. And as Marcus Reed walked into the awakening terminal, the morning light rose behind him, soft, brilliant, and entirely deserved. The sky wasn't something he owned. It was something head opened. For himself, for everyone who'd been told no before they even boarded. For everyone still waiting at gates built by hands that never expected them to pass through. Marcus walked forward. Not victorious, just rightfully, quietly, undeniably where he belonged.